because that's what we felt the delegation wanted to expend in total, with the idea that the amortization of the cooperative extension based on what they paid in rent was worth about
$45,000 a year.
But the amortization of that
No,
would make
$42,525, and they are not going up for rent for the next 5 years if we sign a 5-year lease. If we sign a 1-year lease, it will still be $42,525. So there's no rent increase at this moment, except for this coming year. It will not, 2012 will not change.
But-
Sorry.
No problem. And of that 42,500 is some of that utilities is included, right? So I think it was extrapolated as about
We took
32,000.
$10,000 out for utilities.
Yeah, so around $32,000 is what we're expending for the rent. And that if you amortize that as a monthly, as a yearly payment, that buys you about $400,000 in building. Okay, so that would be the bond payment. Does that sound?
That's
You're shaking yes.
pretty
Okay, so
close.
that's around $400,000 for that. So in essence, if we were to build a $400,000 building and house them after that 20-year it was 20 years, right? After 20 years, we paid for the building, and that beyond that, it'd be rent-free. Okay, that's the scenario. That's the cost-benefit analysis of having them continue renting versus us building them a building to house them, wherever it is, okay? So the old nursing home, at least from where I sat, was, okay, so we've got about $400,000 that we can certainly justify in renovation of the old nursing home to house cooperative extension there. And then, if it was going to cost around $300,000 to tear, well, it's about $275, we'll say, to tear the whole blooming thing down. Okay, that, so
I don't know where that figure came from.
it came from Randy Remick. I asked him to demolish, to completely, and I'm not stating that this is what we should do, but this is what it would cost to level the building. Okay, and just down to nothing, is about $6 per square foot. Okay, it was at the last meeting, I believe, that we had. We discussed it. So it was around $275,000. That's what he estimates is what it would cost to completely haul it out. Okay, so that's the cost that we'd have to incur just to get rid of it. So there's $275,000. So we just and then what would the value be to have this extra space? So we decided that we were willing to spend $1 million in total. That's what we were looking at. And, unfortunately, we received a plan back, that was really, and in actuality, we had the contingencies, because that 230 is only per side, so that's really a total of 460, that Mr. Remick basically quoted that, it's about $1.5 million to redo the roof. That was his estimate in total. And unfortunately, that's, the delegation was asking for a budget of $1 million. Now, if that means that perhaps you need to have a smaller building in total and take a look at that, is a possibility. I noticed that in the demo of the 2 wings and new wall replacement per side, that $230,000 per side, only $55,000 is for the tearing down of the wings. The approximately, we'll say $170,000 is to put in a foundation in the holes, because that's where the big cost is that part of the nursing home has no foundation under it where those holes are, and so 230 minus 55 is about 175, right? So $175,000 of that estimate is to block up the wall and to put in a foundation and have it weather tight and freeze resistant. Okay, so that is a major cost, is filling in those holes, not the tearing down of the wings. Anyway, I kind of brought forth to a couple of representatives when we were at the meeting that perhaps we should look at reducing the overall scope of how much we're going to renovate, because there's about approximately 15,000 square feet over there. They need 3. And that would-
Which is 4,500 in that space.
Right, but right, or
Yeah.
45, so they're, you know, taking up about 1/3, and there's about 10,000 left over for other uses. You know, it's my understanding that part of that annex, or, you know, what is now the annex or the core, is actually an addition that is even less than 46 years old. I'm not sure how big that is, but if that already has freeze lines all the way around it, because it was the addition attached to the current building, you know, it may be more beneficial to reduce our scope of what we renovate to that size. Unfortunately, I don't know how big that is. I apologize, I don't know. But, you know, the scope of the project, in my eyes, if we're, you know, to try to reach this $1 million figure, would be a solution. And so I would hope that would be something that could be a consideration that could be looked at, is how big that addition was. And would that be big enough to house what we essentially need over there? I don't, you know, that the room for the pellet boiler, perhaps room for laundry, cooperative extension, and some space for maintenance, which was the current, you know, what would we have if we only did that? Because that, I think, is going to greatly reduce the cost, if it's possible. And overall, you'll have an open space, because that section of the building looks fairly open. Because I think I'm pretty sure we're talking about where the current cafeteria is the newest part of the building.
Is that the rear of the building?
Yeah, which would be the rear of the building.
Not really accessible for our public coming in, as well as the front of the building. And the front of the building is...
That would be part of the total renovation. That would be part of it, that part would be the part that would be taken off where you're currently housed. You'd actually be housed in another section of the building that is already open, so you may need less space. However, you know, that's all kind of speculation, because unfortunately I don't know how big that area is and if it would work.
Can't we decide?
I think if we were with all, yes, I heard your comment, and I respect that comment. Why can't we decide?
It's not just you.
And I do that, and I respect your comment.
We can't decide what we want to do with an old building.
I think I would have a lot easier time making the decision, Madam Chair, if we were indeed presented with that plan that met the budget of $1 million a month ago instead of one that was 1.5. You know, whatever that plan was, I think that's when we would be at more of a decision process, because we didn't get that first initial plan. Because now we're saying, well, essentially, I think, are we willing to spend 1.5? With 1.5 to 1.7 is what Mr. Remick quoted when you added contingencies and planning and that sort of thing. So, and I will yield the floor. Thank you so much for all the time.
Representative Fleck and Representative Pettingill and McConkey.
I do think we get down very close to the $1 million when we talk about not demolishing the wings, because there's $500,000 right there to take down all the wings. Those wings could very well stand, and Randy said that's true. They could just stand and they could be mothballed. You don't have to do anything with. All you need is a drywall construction wall to separate the old from the new, and you just seal it off. You don't have to get into any foundation work or anything if you do that. So that's one of the things that he talked about. But that does save around $500,000. So it gets you very close to that $1 million figure if the $1 million figure is what we want to shoot for. And we could probably chip away at some other things to get it somewhat below that.
Representative Pettingill, McConkey, and McCarthy.
Well, I just wanted to say that I supported Representative McConkey in this discussion of it being a final figure of 1.5 million, and that was with what Randy was discussing, 15% added to that. It's just adding up to a lot more than what we had presented that we were comfortable with.
Representative McConkey and then McCarthy.
Thank you. I'm disappointed. I know Mr. Remick was here earlier. Is he still in the room?
I don't think so.
Okay. He wasn't here? Okay. Well, we're talking about $1.5 million. I don't know why we don't have them available. I find it ironic, having been through building a jail, a new nursing home, and a few other structures, and work on public works. We built a courthouse that didn't have a generator with it, and first day we're doing a dedication, the power goes out and there's no generator. All of a sudden the judges are nervous. I'm nervous now. We asked for something to come in at $1 million. It's awful convenient, having seen budgets for a number of years, that it comes in at 1.5, but if you take away the one thing we said overwhelmingly we wanted out of there, which was 2 wings, it would come back to $1 million. It's incredible how numbers can work that way. Now we're being told, let's keep the wings because conveniently it'll save us $500,000. They did their due diligence. They came in at $1.5 million. We had a vote, and our vote was $1 million. This is not acceptable. I don't know where we're heading with this, but we shouldn't even be continuing on our conversation. In my opinion, and I would think we would go to a vote.
Make a
It
motion.
came in, well, I'm not quite sure where we need to be, but my motion is that we disavow the bid came in, or that the cost is 50% higher than what we anticipated, and the delegation does not approve this expenditure.
It's a motion by Representative McConkey,
I'll second.
represented by Representative Umberger. Before we have discussion on that, I'll go to Representative McCarthy, so you do. Go ahead.
Yes, just 2 observations. One, unless I missed something, because I did miss one meeting, we voted already that the only thing we're going to discuss, the only thing we're going to save was the core building. The wings are gone. I don't know why we're talking about the wings. We've already voted on that, and then we were asked again later to rescind that vote, to think it over again, and we voted on that and said no again. My second question is to Representative Fleck. You're talking now $500,000 to destroy those wings. It started out at $57,000 per wing. How did it get all of a sudden to $500,000?
That's the figure that Bonnet, Page, and Stone gave us.
Can I interject? If I may help
Yeah.
Representative Fleck, is that the $500,000, you see the 230,60? That's the 230,600, that's per side, so that's approximately $460,000. It says for the demo of 2 wings, and new wall replacement. The demo of the wings is $55,000 approximately. The balance of that is for the wall replacement and pouring the foundation, building a wall.
And wasn't it the furnace and, because you gotta redo all the...
The furnace and such is included in the cooperative extensions area. That 452 includes the new heating and air conditioning systems for that area, and then the balance of the area, I don't think was going to be air conditioned, and they planned on using the current heat system. I think is what that sounds.
I thought,
Karen's
excuse
right.
me, I believe that the way that the heating system is set up over there, if you eliminate any of the wings, it changes the whole configuration of the heating system, and that's part of the cost. That's why the cost for demolition was higher than just demolishing the wings. You can't just demolish the wings without retrofitting the heating system. And that was part of why the cost went up so significantly.
So I have a motion on the floor that the delegation does not approve the 50% higher estimate by Bonnet, Page, and Stone. Is that what you want? Can I ask you a question? What would be the consequence of this vote?
We had a vote, if I could, Madam Chairman, we had a vote previously that we would expend up to $1 million. We're now being asked to expend $1.5 million. By not approving $1.5 million, I'm saying that we will not, and that we will go back to our original that it could not exceed more than $1 million. with all the demolition and renovation.